Martha sat on the edge of her bed, clutching her aching feet with both hands. Another workday had ended, as it always did, with heaviness in her legs, swelling, and a dull pain that seemed to reach her very bones. She sighed, looking down at her feet, once slender and strong, but now a constant reminder of endless hours on her feet. High heels and office immobility. Doctors shrugged, prescribing ointments and pills that offered no relief. It's age, they said. But Martha refused to believe it. She was only 35, yet she felt like she was 60. She lowered her head and closed her eyes, trying to imagine what it would feel like to have lightness in her legs again, like in her youth when she could walk, dance, and run for hours. Now even a short walk to the store felt like an ordeal. Her legs ached, her feet burned, and by evening the swelling was so bad her shoes would no longer fit. Martha sighed and reached for the cream her doctor had prescribed. She applied it to her skin, massaging her feet, but the relief was fleeting. The pain always came back, like an unwelcome guest who didn't know when to leave. Martha got up and walked to the window. Rain streaked the glass, the droplets running down like tears. She remembered how, as a child, she loved running in the rain, feeling the drops splash against her face and her feet push off the wet pavement with ease. Back then, she was free, free like the wind. But now, she felt like a prisoner in her own body. She stepped away from the window and decided to clean the house, hoping to distract herself. Martha climbed up to the attic where old things had been gathering dust for years. Boxes of books, clothes, toys. All of it sat there, waiting for someone to sort through them. She picked up the first box she saw and opened it. Inside were old photographs. She pulled one out and smiled. In the photo was her grandmother, Anna, young, slender, and glowing with a bright smile. Grandmother Anna was a legend in their family. She had run marathons, climbed mountain peaks, and always said that healthy legs were the key to freedom. Martha remembered how her grandmother had taught her to dance barefoot on the grass, saying that feet needed to feel the earth. "You must take care of them, Martha," she would say. "They are your foundation, your strength." But back then Martha had been too young to understand those words. Now they sounded like a reminder of something important she had overlooked. She placed the photo back in the box and picked up another item. Inside were an old pair of sneakers. They looked strange, worn but still sturdy. On the sole there was an engraved symbol that resembled an ancient sign, and inside a yellowed piece of paper was tucked away. Martha unfolded it and read, "Healthy legs are the key to freedom. Whoever wears these sneakers will find the path to truth." "Much nonsense," Martha muttered, but something inside her urged her to try the sneakers on. As soon as she laced them up, something changed. The sneakers began to glow faintly with a bluish light, and Martha felt an incredible lightness in her legs. She stood up, and the pain that had tormented her for years vanished. She took one step, then another, and suddenly the world around her began to blur. When Martha opened her eyes, she found herself in a forest. The air was fresh and tall pines surrounded her. She looked around and saw a young woman running along the path. The woman was dressed in athletic gear, and on her feet were sneakers identical to Martha's. "Grandma?" Martha whispered, recognizing the woman as her grandmother Anna. Anna stopped and smiled. "You've finally found them," she said. "These sneakers aren't just shoes, they're a guide. You must complete the trials to truly understand what it means to be free." "What trials?" Martha asked. "You must run a marathon, cross a mountain pass, and learn to listen to your body," Anna replied. "Only then will you understand that healthy legs are not just about the absence of pain. They are harmony." Martha wanted to protest that she wasn't fit enough, that her legs hurt, that she couldn't possibly do it. But Anna was already gone, leaving her alone in the forest. Martha stood on the path, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing she understood: this was her chance to change her life. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, into the unknown. Martha stood on the trail, feeling her heart pounding in her chest. The forest around her was quiet, with only the soft rustle of leaves in the wind and the distant sound of bird song. She looked around, but her grandmother Anna had vanished, leaving her alone. The sneakers on her feet still glowed faintly with a bluish light, and her legs, which usually ached and swelled, now felt incredibly light and strong. "What the hell is going on?" Martha whispered, though a spark of excitement was already stirring inside her. She had always dreamed of adventure, but reality had been far from her dreams. Endless office work, endless reports, exhaustion and pain, and now here she was, in a forest, wearing strange sneakers, faced with a seemingly impossible task. Run a marathon? She could barely walk a few miles without stopping, but she had no choice. Martha took a deep breath and stepped forward. The trail wound its way through the forest, and with each step she felt her body adjusting. The sneakers seemed to guide her, how to plant her feet, how to breathe, how to distribute her weight. She walked, then gradually began to jog, and soon she was running at a steady, light pace. The first kilometer was easy. The air was fresh, and the forest around her felt so alive that Martha almost forgot her fears. But by the third kilometer, fatigue began to set in. Her legs, which had felt light at first, now started to ache. Her breathing grew labored, and her thoughts began to swirl. "I can't do this. It's too hard. Why did I even agree to this?" She slowed to a walk, almost stopping, but then she heard her grandmother's voice. "Pain is not your enemy. It's your teacher. Listen to your body." Martha closed her eyes and focused on her breathing. She felt the air filling her lungs, her heartbeat syncing with her steps. She realized that running wasn't just about moving forward. It was a dialogue with herself. She began to listen to her body, slowing down when necessary and picking up her pace when she felt a surge of energy. By the 10th kilometer, Martha started to understand what it meant to be in harmony with herself. She noticed how her body was changing. Her leg muscles felt stronger, her breathing became steady, and her thoughts grew clearer. She even began to enjoy the run. The forest around her was beautiful, towering pines, soft moss underfoot, and sunlight streaming through the leaves. She felt like a part of this world, and the feeling was incredibly freeing. But by the 15th kilometer, exhaustion crept in again. Her legs burned as if they were on fire, and doubts resurfaced in her mind. "I can't do this. It's too much." Martha wanted to stop, but then she remembered her grandmother's words. Healthy legs are not just about strength. They're about knowing when to rest. She found a small stream, sat down on a rock, and dipped her feet into the cool water. The relief was indescribable. She massaged her feet, feeling the tension melt away as her body regained its energy. She realized that taking care of herself wasn't weakness. It was essential. When Martha stood up again, she felt renewed. She resumed running, but no longer rushed. She savored every step, every breath, every moment. By the 20th kilometer, she wasn't thinking about the finish line anymore. She reflected on how much she had changed in just a few hours. She felt stronger, more confident, freer. But the final kilometers were the hardest. Her legs burned, her breath faltered, and the doubts returned. She wanted to stop, but then she saw the finish line in the distance. Summoning all her willpower, she pushed forward, running faster. Every step was a struggle, but she refused to give up. She remembered her grandmother's words. "Pain is not your enemy, it's your teacher." When she crossed the finish line, her legs gave out and she collapsed onto the grass. Lying there, staring at the sky, she felt her heart pounding and her body filling with warmth. She had done it. She had run a marathon. When Martha opened her eyes, she saw her grandmother Anna standing over her, smiling. "You did it," Anna said. "But this is just the beginning. More challenges lie ahead." Martha wanted to ask what was next, but Anna was already gone. Martha was alone again, but this time she felt different. She understood now that healthy legs were not just about being pain-free. They were about balance, between movement and rest, between strength and flexibility. She stood up and looked at her legs. They were tired but strong. She smiled and stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Martha stood at the edge of the forest, her gaze fixed on the towering mountain ridge before her. She felt both drained and invigorated after the marathon. Her legs, which once throbbed with pain and swelled at the end of each day, now felt strong though tired. Grandmother Anna's words echoed in her mind. The next challenge was to conquer the mountain pass. Martha sighed, realizing this would be even more daunting than the marathon. She took a step forward, and the sneakers on her feet glowed faintly with that familiar bluish light, as if guiding her. With each stride, she felt her body grow stronger, but she knew the mountains were unforgiving. They did not tolerate mistakes. The first few kilometers of the ascent were relatively easy. The trail was gentle, the air crisp and cool. Martha soaked in the scenery, towering pines, moss-covered rocks, and snow-capped peaks in the distance. She felt a sense of unity with nature, her body moving in harmony with the rhythm of the trail. But as the climb progressed, the path grew steeper and more treacherous. The trail narrowed, winding along the edge of a steep cliff. Martha glanced down, her heart pounding as fear gripped her. She had never been afraid of heights, but now panic clawed at her. Each step felt precarious, and the strength she'd felt in her legs moments ago was replaced by trembling uncertainty. "You must keep going," she heard her grandmother's voice say. "Fear is nothing but an illusion." Closing her eyes, Martha took a deep breath and stepped forward. She focused on her breathing, on each movement, each step. Slowly the fear receded, and she regained her composure. The challenges, however, were far from over. The higher she climbed, the colder it became. The wind howled through the mountains, and the trail grew more perilous with each step. Fatigue crept into her body, her legs burned, her hands shook, and doubt began to whisper in her mind, "I can't do this. It's too hard." She spotted a small ledge and sat down to rest. Removing her sneakers, she dipped her feet into an icy stream that trickled nearby. Relief washed over her as the cool water soothed her aching muscles. She massaged her feet, feeling the tension melt away as her strength returned. She realized in that moment that self-care wasn't weakness, it was essential. When she stood again, she felt renewed. She continued her climb, this time at a steady, deliberate pace. She appreciated each step, each breath, each moment. She noticed how her body adapted. Her leg muscles became firmer, her breathing steadier, her thoughts clearer. The final stretch to the pass was the hardest. The trail had all but disappeared, reduced to a narrow ledge that hugged the cliffside. Martha moved forward, her heart racing, her legs trembling with exertion. She wanted to stop, but then she spotted the pass ahead. Summoning every ounce of willpower, she pushed herself forward. Each step was a battle, but she refused to give up. Her grandmother's words rang in her ears. "Pain is not your enemy. It's your teacher." At last she reached the summit. Her legs buckled, and she collapsed onto the rocky ground. Lying there, gazing up at the sky, she felt her heart pounding and her body warming with a profound sense of accomplishment. She had done it. She had conquered the mountain pass. When Martha opened her eyes, she saw her grandmother Anna standing over her, smiling. "You did it," Anna said. "But this is only the beginning. More challenges lie ahead." Martha wanted to ask what was next, but Anna was already gone. She was alone again, yet she felt transformed. She understood now that healthy legs weren't just about being pain-free. They were about finding balance between movement and rest, between strength and flexibility. Martha stood and looked at her legs. They were tired, but they were strong. She smiled and took a step forward, ready to embrace whatever came next. Martha opened her eyes and found herself back in the attic of her home. She was sitting on the floor, surrounded by dusty old boxes, holding the same sneakers in her hands. The glow that once emanated from them had faded, and now they looked like an ordinary worn pair of shoes. But Martha knew they were more than that. They were the key to something profound, something she had discovered within herself. She rose slowly, feeling her body respond to every movement. Her legs, which once ached and swelled after long days, now felt light and strong. She took a few steps, savoring the soft touch of her feet against the floor. She felt different, more mindful, more alive. Martha descended from the attic and walked into her room. She sat on the edge of her bed and reflected. Everything she had experienced felt like a dream, but she knew it was real. She had run a marathon, climbed a mountain pass, and learned to listen to her body. Now, she understood that healthy legs weren't just about being pain-free. They were about achieving harmony between body and mind. The next morning, Martha woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. She decided she would no longer neglect her body. She started small. She stretched, did light exercises, and massaged her feet. She chose comfortable shoes over the high heels she once adored. She realized that caring for herself wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a necessity. Over the following weeks, Martha began transforming her life. She took up yoga to strengthen her muscles and improve her flexibility. She made it a habit to take breaks at work to stretch and give her legs a rest. She even started jogging in the mornings, relishing how her body responded to the movement. But most importantly, she learned to truly listen to her body. If her legs began to ache, she didn't ignore the signals. She took the time to rest. If she felt tired, she allowed herself to relax. She understood that health wasn't just about being free of illness. It was about balancing movement and rest, strength and flexibility. One evening, Martha returned to the attic. She took the box with the sneakers and carefully placed them back where she had found them. They had served their purpose. Martha no longer needed their magic. She had found her freedom. She closed the box and smiled. Now, she knew that healthy legs weren't just about physical well-being. They were about the freedom to move forward, to pursue new goals and dreams. She felt strong, confident, and ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Martha stood on the hilltop gazing out at the endless horizon. The wind played with her hair, and her legs, once plagued by pain, now felt strong and light. She looked toward the mountains in the distance where the sun was setting, painting the sky with warm hues of orange and pink. It was a moment she would never forget, a moment when she realized that healthy legs weren't just about being pain-free. They were about freedom, the freedom to move forward, to chase dreams and embrace new goals. She took a deep breath, feeling the fresh air fill her lungs. Memories of the past weeks flooded her mind. The marathon, the mountain pass, the lessons learned, and the moments of doubt when she thought she couldn't go on. But she had persevered. She had faced every challenge and emerged stronger, wiser, and freer. Martha descended the hill slowly, savoring every step. The path led her through a quiet forest, and with each step, she felt her body harmonize with nature. She noticed how her gait had transformed, light, confident, and free of the heaviness that had once burdened her. It was as if she was gliding over the ground. Emerging from the forest, she found herself facing a quaint little town nestled at the base of the mountains. Narrow streets, charming old houses, and warm faces greeted her. Martha smiled. She felt a deep sense of belonging, as though this place had been waiting for her. She strolled down the main street, peering into shop windows and small cafes. Strangers smiled at her, and she smiled back, her heart warmed by the simplicity of connection. She felt that here, in this unassuming town, she could start anew, a life where she would honor her body, listen to it, and keep moving forward. Martha spotted a small cafe and stepped inside. The aroma of fresh coffee and pastries enveloped her like a comforting embrace. She chose a seat by the window and ordered a cup of tea. While waiting, she watched children playing soccer in the street and elderly couples chatting on park benches. She felt like a part of this vibrant, simple world, and the sense of belonging was exhilarating. When her tea arrived, she held the warm cup in her hands and closed her eyes. Thoughts of her grandmother Anna came to her mind, the wise woman who had always said, "Healthy legs are the key to freedom." Now Marta truly understood those words. Healthy legs weren't just a physical state, they were a balance between body and spirit, a dialogue with oneself, a commitment to care, and a will to keep moving despite challenges. After finishing her tea, Martha left the cafe and wandered into a small park at the center of the town. She sat down on a wooden bench and slipped off her sneakers. She let her bare feet sink into the cool, soft grass. Closing her eyes, she focused on the sensations coursing through her. She felt the earth's energy rise to meet her, grounding her, lifting her, and filling her with warmth and strength. At that moment, she realized that healthy legs weren't just about freedom from pain. They were a connection to the earth, to nature, and to herself. Taking care of herself wasn't a sign of weakness, but a fundamental act of strength. Freedom wasn't merely the ability to move. It was the courage to listen to her heart and follow its lead. When Martha opened her eyes, an elderly woman was sitting beside her on the bench. The woman smiled warmly. "You look happy," the woman said. "I feel free," Martha replied. The woman nodded knowingly. Her gaze fell on the sneakers lying next to Martha. "Sometimes the simplest things can change our lives," she said. Martha smiled back, realizing how true those words were. The sneakers she'd found in the attic had transformed her life. Not by themselves, but through what they'd helped her uncover. She'd learned that healthy legs weren't just about physical health. They were about freedom. The freedom to move forward, to reach for new dreams, and to embrace life with open arms. Martha stood, sliding her sneakers back on. They hugged her feet comfortably, as if saying, "You've done well." She smiled and stepped forward, ready to continue her journey. She knew there were more challenges ahead, but she was prepared. She understood now that healthy legs weren't just a state of being. They were a harmony of body and soul. They were freedom. As she walked down the street, the wind played with her hair, the sun warmed her skin, and her feet moved effortlessly across the ground. She walked as if she were floating above the earth. She walked as if she were truly free, and she knew this was only the beginning.